Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to the fourth lecture in the series of Fintech. My name is Dr. Sudhender Hanumantarao. I am the Dean of Faculty of Management and Commerce at Manipal University in Jaipur. This lecture is being broadcast on channel 16 Swayam Prabha. With that, let us get started. In the first three lectures, in the first lecture we got an introduction into what is Fintech, what is unique about it, what identifies that, what benefits does it bring, how does it affect our life, what are the technologies it draws from. So, we got an introduction to each of these little topics which together form what we refer to as Fintech. In the second lecture, we looked at one of the fundamentals that we need to know about Fintech. Fintech affects money. How does that change? Money has been there historically. How does the concept, how does the application, how do the implementations change in the domain of Fintech? We looked at, for example, digital cash and the challenges it has to address. In the third lecture, we looked at another basic fundamental concept that is very essential to Fintech, security of our information. In Fintech, nothing exists in physical form, everything exists as information. So, it is very important to protect it, and one of the key tools we have to protect information is cryptography. There are many other tools, but this is the most critical one, especially when information is transmitted between various parties. In finance, in any business transaction, we have to send and receive information. So, cryptography enables us to do it safely in such a manner that information is not stolen or misused. Not only that, it also helps us protect information when it is with us in some form, in a file, in a disk, in a database. And also cryptography is has one more real role in Fintech, that an entire series of products is borrowed from cryptography, that is cryptocurrencies. So, it has multiple roles within Fintech. So, we took a brief look at that. Today, peripherally, we just touch upon another key important aspect of Fintech or any business for that matter, and it is the concept of risk and how do we manage risk. For the young folks who are watching this lecture, I can tell you that the risk and risk management can be one of the most promising careers today in the field of Fintech and financial services. It is a very vast field again, as with most everything else. So, in this lecture, just let us take a brief look at what is risk, what are the major types of risk, and what are some of the measures we can take. As I said, it is a deep enough field to spawn careers of its own. We will take a brief look at what is risk and how do we address that. These are some of the definitions I have taken from a white paper published by the Federal Reserve in the US about covering these different aspects of risk. Risk is no one single thing. How does it exist? Who are the parties affected by that? How does it come into the picture? So, they have given a number of definitions to show us the importance of the concept of risk in the field of financial services and Fintech. Let us go through some of those definitions that I have given, some of the statements they have made. A data breach or an operational disruption in a portion of a payment system can open the metaphorical floodgates to problems throughout the entire system. We use payment systems like Google Pay, Paytm and all. One single data breach in one of them can affect so many other interrelated systems. It is like once the breach happens in one place, it does not stay there, it does not get contained there, it spreads throughout the system. That is the risk. Every financial tool involves risk. These are taken from a Federal Reserve report. Every tool, the moment we use money, the moment we use mobile to make a payment, we do an online bank transfer, the moment we log in to check our bank account, or when we deposit a money, when we deposit any cash, when we physically deposit a check, or when we take a photo and mail it over. Whatever tool we use to deal with our finance and financial services. When we buy a stock, when we buy a share, when we sell a stock, at every tool that we use to do all these activities, pay our monthly bills, there is an amount of risk involved. There is no element of financial services and fintech which is free from risk. The risk present when new or still emerging payment methods are used are not wholly different from those present in long established methods of payment. What is one of the risks of payment? That we pay to the wrong party. We could do it by cash too. We could buy from somebody, so we may have material delivered to us and give our cash to that person, the delivery boy. That person may disappear with the cash. So, in essence, we have done it, we have paid cash to the wrong party. So, that is one of the risks when we deal with money, when we deal with cash. Same thing may happen in online payment systems too. By mistake, if you make a mistake in one of the digits of a 14 or 16 digit bank account number, money will get deposited to that account. If it is a valid customer with KYC with all the other details check out, when we do a transfer, it will get deposited to that account, but we would have paid the wrong party. On one occasion, instead of depositing $475, the bank had deposited $457. Same 3 digits entered wrongly manually results in a loss of $28, $18 to me. There are methods to get out of that. So, there are methods to avoid this risk too, but risks are inherent in any system, in any tool, and what happens online is not that different from what is happening in the offline, the previous world, when we dealt with physical cash and physical instruments. Our analysis suggests that certain risks are more salient in emerging retail payments than elsewhere in the payment market space. Having said that, certain types of risk are more prevalent in the fintech world than in the previous world. We will see one of them which is very important in the fintech world, namely the technological risk, which is very inherent. It is much more stronger, more salient, more important in the fintech world than in the physical world. Proprietary online balance transfer methods depend on complex multi-step processes. For the user, the tasks are kept simple. Behind the scenes, however, many parties are involved in completing a transaction. For example, a credit card transaction. For example, we just swipe the card, enter our PIN, and somehow magically the transaction gets approved, the merchant gets paid. But if we see the actual flow of information in a credit card transaction, it is much more complex and it is all hidden from us. For example, when we swipe, the message has to go from the swiper to the local server by Wi-Fi. From that server, it may go to the internet provider through a wired connection, what have you. From the internet connection, in the internet provider, it may go to the merchant's bank server. From the merchant's bank server, it has to go to the network, whether it is Visa or MasterCard, their servers for verification. From there, the information travels to the server of our bank, which has issued us the credit card. All these steps have to happen in the background and they get traced in reverse when the transaction approval is given. At all these steps, there are risks where information can be stolen, it can be misused, operations can be brought down, can be hacked. So, all the complexity is hidden from us, but the risk in that is that if there is something bad happening, we may also not also come to know. These are some of the statements made in this particular report to tell us the nature of risk, how it can affect us, how it exists, and why do we need to be mindful, and which are more important than others. There are some more important in the fintech world than in other types of financial services. All legitimate payment system participants, consumers, merchants, banks and other service providers share a common interest in risk mitigation. So, to reduce the risk, we will take examples. To reduce the risk, somebody may steal the credit card number, for example. All of us have to be careful. For example, we as consumers have to make sure that our credit card is not expired, we do not give it to anyone, we do not give out the PIN to anyone, for example. So, each of us, the merchants have to make sure that the swiper is secure, the PIN to operate the swiper is only known to certain people and it connects properly to their server. So, at every step, every player has to be conscious and take measures to reduce the risk, to take safety measures. We as consumers, as I said, We have to make sure that we do not carelessly leave the credit card somewhere, we do not give out the PIN to somebody, measures like that. Okay. So, these are just some statements to show the importance of the concept of risk in financial technology and fintech, financial services and fintech. So, what is risk? A risk is an uncertain event which may occur. What is a certain event? A certain event is that when I swipe my credit card, payment gets done and I am only billed for the right amount. That is what we want to happen. An uncertain event being our payment may be declined, or the payment may get credited to the wrong account. Somebody may steal our credit card number. So, it is not just an uncertain event, it is also an undesirable event. We want money to be paid to the customer, not to be stolen by some third party and sold in the dark world or be used to charge our accounts. So, a risk is an uncertain, undesirable event. We need to add that here, uncertain or unwanted, let me put it that way. Unwanted event which may occur. It is not necessary, we design our systems that such events do not occur, but it is possible. For various reasons, this unwanted event may happen. A risk may prevent or delay the achievement of an organization's units or objectives or goals. Risk may prevent or delay. In our case, let us say for the first time the card is swiped wrongly and the transaction does not go through, the merchant does not get paid and the transaction will not happen. We can try it again, we can try it again and get the transaction done again, and this time it will go through. So, in that case it is only delaying the objective, or it may completely prevent the objective being done. Suppose there is a flaw in our card, it has been damaged in some way. We do not know that the magnetic strip might have been, or the chip inside may have been compromised. So, in that case the transaction does not go through at all. So, the potential effect of risk is that it may prevent our objective from being done. If somebody steals all the account numbers of a bank and starts stealing money from them, the bank's objective is to do banking transactions and make a profit in the process. It will be prevented from doing that by the risk in somebody hacking or breaking into their system. And a risk is not certain. By definition, if it is certain, we can eliminate that. If we know that this problem happens every time, if this power it fails or the number gets stolen, we will put some measures to make sure that does not happen. So, risk is always an uncertain event. If it is a certain event, it is no longer a risk. We can take measures to eliminate it completely. If magnetic strips do not work properly, or if it is easy to be stolen, data has to be stolen from magnetic strips, you can replace that with a smart chip, which we will see in credit cards how it is done. What are smart chips? So, we may replace this magnetic strip card with a smart card which is much safer, which cannot be hacked into or broken into so easily. So, if a possibility of bad event is certain, if we know that it is going to happen, we will take measures. It is a risk, but we can eliminate that. The problem is with events whose occurrence is uncertain. It is a probabilistic event. It may happen. They may say this card, this magnetic strip on this card works 99.999% of the time. That means 0.01% of the time it fails. So, if I do 1 million transactions, 0.1% is 1000 times. If I do 1 million transactions, that may fail 1000 times out of 1 million. In some cases it may be acceptable, in some cases it may not be acceptable. We may say 1000 cases out of 1 million is too high, or 1000 cases 1 million is bearable. So, but always it is an uncertain event with a possibility of happening, and we can estimate its likelihood, or in mathematical terms you can calculate the probability of that event happening, its likelihood can be estimated. So, risk is generally measured. We can assess the probability, but that is not a whole story. We can assess what is the probability, like I said, out of 1 million or 10 lakh transactions, if 0.01% of events fail, that is the risk of failing is 0.01%. That means we can get a number that probably 1000 transactions out of every 10 lakh transactions may not work as designed, they may fail, they may lead to bad results. It does not mean that for every 10 lakh there will be 1000, it is a probability. If you take an average of all bunches of 10 lakh events over a period of some period, say 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year, if you can bunch all the transactions, 0.01% of them might fail. So, that is how we measure the probability occurrence of a risk. The other way, and the second part is, not all risks are the same. If the card reader fails in 0.01% of the cases, that means out of 10 lakh cases it may fail 1000 times, what is the effect of that? Not much, we just swipe it again. It is an inconvenience. If a card reader fails at a petrol station, the impact of that event is just inconvenience. What if the connection to the server fails? No transaction happens. The merchant may lose the business for the entire day, or even worse, what if either the server or the reader is compromised so that somebody can steal the credit card number? The impact of that risk is even much higher. If people come to know that in this particular petrol bunk my credit cards are not safe, they will never come there, they will never use that, we will lose our business. Or worse, if somebody steals money by stealing the credit card number, the credit card company may have to make that loss good to the customers. So, there is risk, there is a probability of risk, but the net impact may not be the same in all cases. There are low impact events which we may be able to tolerate or buy insurance, but there may be a high impact event like a terrorist attack which happened in 2001. We all saw those graphic visuals where the two towers of the World Trade Center came down. That is a very low probability event. Who would have ever imagined that? But what happened was, quite a few of the company's data centers were in those two towers. So, when that low probability event happened, it brought the entire financial business to a stop. Lot of losses were incurred, lot of businesses got abandoned, lot of transactions got abandoned in the middle, and many companies could not come back and work for quite some time till they were able to set it back. So, that is a low probability high impact event. A card reader failing to read is a probably a higher probability low impact event. The total quantum of risk is a function of both of them. So, we measure risk as a probability of an event 0.01 in the case of a card reader into impact of an event, not much. We can put a financial number on this. What is the financial loss that is caused by this event? Say probably $1 per event, let us say, inconvenience, that is all. Whereas, the probability of being hit by a terrorist attack may be very low, but the impact of the event is maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, 200 million, because our data center is destroyed, business is lost, we have to put money to put it back again. So, the measure of risk is the probability of that event happening, how many out of X amount of attempts, how many times will it happen, and what will happen when that event. Together, a combination of this again, this formulae is a very simple formula presented here, but the actual formulae used in business can get quite complex, but in sum the basics remain the same, probability of the event and the impact of that event happening. Here is that. And so far as in fintech or in financial services are concerned, risks can be classified in three terms. There can be other types of risks too. Risk to life, for example, when we go drive on the street, there is a probability of us getting into an accident and unfortunately somebody may lose their life or lose a limb, damage to the body, being hurt. That is a different kind of risk, and there is a probability with that, and there is a loss associated with that and things like that. So, there are different types of risk to property. In financial world, in the financial services world, they could say the impact could be on three aspects of our financial services. One is financial itself, operational and technological. These are three key types of risk we face in the financial services, and fintech, especially the technological risk, can be quite high, because in fintech, as we have seen, technology itself is the product. So, it itself may cause severe losses. Any failure to that, any threat to that can lead to significant losses. So, the impact could be in financial, technological or operational. These are three key types of risks that are relevant, important for us. Loss of life is too, but not in this sense. Okay. And the second thing to remember, if we present a product, if we present a service, we say we can do your transactions with such speed, you gain so much per transaction, your profit per transaction is so much, so your net profit goes up. When we give all that presentation and then we say these are the risks involved, the system may break down, it may credit the wrong account. Somebody may come back and say, if you know the risks, why not you eliminate them? That is the challenge. That is the challenge. Risks can rarely be eliminated. The moment we transmit, like I said, I gave the example of using a credit card at a petrol station or a gas station. If I use it, it goes through various links. The data first is captured by the swiper. As it goes on the wireless to the server, somebody may intercept that. When it is on the server, somebody may hack into the server and steal data. So, whenever data goes through all these hops, and the thing with internet is, we are never sure what is the path. If I send you an email, you are sitting in front of me, if I send you an SMS, if I send you an email from my mobile, if I send you a WhatsApp message, we have no idea what is the path it takes. For all that we know, that message may actually get routed to Hong Kong and come to you. You might be in front of me, I am sending you my phone number by WhatsApp, that may go to a server in Hong Kong and come back via satellite to your phone. So, when we do not know what path data can take, unpredictable, we cannot be sure that risk can be eliminated at every step. We do not even know which path we take, how do we eliminate that risk? And anything can break down, something, the swiper may break down, the server may break down, the Wi-Fi connection may break down, all are unpredictable events. So, we will not be able to eliminate risk. We cannot eliminate systems from failing. Anything ultimately after certain use will fail, electronic items too fail. So, risks we can perhaps make it fail proof, but it costs a lot of money. Is it worth doing so much? In some cases, yes, like we will see in the case of business continuity and disaster recovery, certain data centers have complete setups called redundant setups. If setup A fails, the system will still continue because system B is up and running. But you see what is happening now. If setup A costs $5 million, setup B also will cost $5 million. So, to make sure that system continues to run, it may fail, but continues to run, we are doubling our investment. So, risks can really practically, from a practical point of view, we cannot fully eliminate risks. So, we can only do mitigate, that is, when a risk happens, when there is a risk, when an undesirable event, a failure, fraud, what have you happens, we can take measures to reduce its impact, to make sure that it does not bring our systems down, to make sure that it does not bring our business down. Risk is there, based on a probability, a bad event will happen. It may not happen all the time, but at some time it may happen. We will not be able to reduce that probability to 0, but we can take measures to reduce the impact of that event, and that is called mitigation. Risk can be mitigated. So, this is an important thing to remember. We can never eliminate risk, but we can take measures to make sure that its loss is minimized, the damage is minimized, effect on our business is minimized, and that concept is called risk mitigation. Risk elimination, not a practical solution. So, I guess we have a concept of risk now. It is the probability of an undesirable event, it is an uncertain event and we can estimate what is the probability that will happen, and we measure risk. Not all risks are equally impactful, some risks can be fatal, some risks can be very mild, and we can take it along in our stride. So, we measure risk by a product of probability of that event happening times the impact of that event. In financial world, we try to capture this in financial terms. If this server fails, for example, for one of the studies in a company that I was part of, we had done one such estimate. We had a web page where people can go there, give their details, and you get a quotation on their home mortgage. I will put details like what is the kind of house I want to buy in which area, what is it going to cost, what is the interest rate I am willing to pay, what is my monthly capability to pay. I can enter all those numbers, the system will calculate and come back to me saying that this is the loan we are going to give you, this is the interest rate, this will be your monthly payment. If I like it, I take that, and the bank gives me the loan, and bank makes a profit of that loan. So, the risk was, what if this website goes down? So, that was calculated. The impact of that risk was actually calculated. We did calculate what is the possibility of this website going down into potentially how many mortgages, how many transactions do we lose, how much of business are we going to lose. If I remember from memory, about 20 years back, it was calculated that for every 1 hour that this website is down, the impact will be $90,000 in lost profits. If the website is down, people will not be able to come to that site, calculate their mortgages, go for buy the mortgage, sign up for the mortgage, and we make some profit. If it is down, they will not be able to do that. So, for every hour this website is down, we are losing $90,000. This is one example of measuring the risk. We have calculated the probability and the impact, 90,000 rupees, and the total is, the risk is, if the site is down, it comes down to $90,000 lost per hour. So, this is a practical example. That is how we apply the concept of risk, and what are the measures we take to eliminate that. So, having talked about risk, what is risk management? How do we manage risk? How do we mitigate risk? Risk management is a process to identify all relevant risks. Like I said, not all risks may be relevant. For a fintech, the possibility of an accident on the road or a traffic jam happening outside is not that much relevant as a risk of a server coming down, as a risk of our data being breached. So, we need to identify all relevant risks, only risks that are relevant to our field. On the other hand, I am an insurance company, the possibility of an accident and somebody being injured or dead is a relevant risk, because my insurance claims, life insurance claims come from that, they are dependent on that. So, we need to consider risks relevant to our business. Assess or rank those risks, prioritize. Like the example I gave, some risks are not that critical. If it happens, if the failure happens, you might still be able to recover quickly without much loss. Certain risks can be fatal, it may bring our business down, cause us significant losses, things like that. So, we need to assess those risks. And why do we prioritize? So that we have a limited amount for risk mitigation, we spend that amount, spend our funding, spend our budget to reduce those risks which have the highest impact on us, and develop mitigation measures for each of those risks. What is the possibility that the server comes down and we lose business? Put a second server. So, if that goes down, this is running, when this is running, we will set it back and we get both of them running. If this fails, the first server will be running. So, we need to develop mitigation measures for each of those risks. We will see some of them in detail. Monitor risks and report on their management. It is not just that we develop these measures and have it ready, we constantly need to keep monitoring. What is the chance? Is it failing? Sometimes we get advance notice that something is failing. Or if we are doing in a retail management business, we are running a retail store, that there is a landslide on the way somewhere, we now know that a truck of tomatoes which is coming to our shop is stopped now. So, we have to constantly monitor. Running out of vegetables in our shop is a risk we do not want to run, and we need to monitor that all the supplies are coming online, and if there is a landslide, we know that there is a risk to some of our supplies. So, we need to constantly monitor that and make alternative plans and report on them to management. So, that is a brief introduction to what is risk, how do we evaluate them, what is the meaning of a relevant risk, what do we mean by risk management. We manage, we cannot eliminate, we manage so that we reduce the impact, we reduce the possibility, we make alternative arrangements so that the impact is minimized. So, in fintech specifically, there are three types of risks which we saw in one of the earlier slides. The three types of risks are financial risks, operational risks, technological risks. So, the first one is financial risk. In anywhere where we deal with money, there is a risk in finance, there is a financial risk. We buy stocks, the stocks may lose value. We buy a house, the house may get damaged in a flood. We buy a computer, it may fail on first day. There is a financial risk involved in every financial transaction. So, the loss could be direct. The loss of this particular type of risk, we may lose money, we may lose our investment. We buy a stock which turns out to be worthless after a period of time. So, we may lose that is a direct loss. We have lost our money that we have invested, we actually lost money. However, there are other types of risks which may lead to financial losses, but they may not be financial in nature. One is loss of customers. If they come to know, if a broker loses money of its customers, how will that broker get any new customers? If there is a financial manager, wealth manager or a broker, and if on certain investments that broker loses money, there will be direct loss of customers. The customers may not come back ever again. Second is the loss of reputation. If it turns out, if a reputation spreads that it is unsafe to use my credit card in this petrol bunk because information may get stolen, that is a loss of reputation. We know that it is an unsafe location, we will not go and use our credit card ever again. Or if we trust one broker to manage our investments, and if that broker loses a lot of money, the reputation spreads that this particular broker is not reliable. He loses money, he or she loses money. The loss of reputation will ensure that they will never recover their original state. Third, to avoid financial risk, there are various regulations. For example, whether it is the SEC in the US or SCBI in India, they have rules on who can deal with stocks, who can deal with shares. We have things called options and shorting and things like that. Who can buy options, who can short a sale. They have very strong stringent regulations, and if a loss happens in those areas which are regulated, the regulatory authorities will come in and levy a penalty. For example, we constantly keep reading that RBI audited the books of certain bank and found certain wrongdoing, they found some risks, some bad things happening, and levy a penalty on them. So, not only if there is a loss to our customers, not only do we have to make good their loss due to a breach in our server, some customers may lose money going out of their account, money may get wrongly credited to some other accounts. These 5,000 customers lost money from their accounts due to a mistake in our software, a glitch in our software. Not only do we have to make good their losses, we have to pay their money which might have gone to wrong parties, there may also be regulatory penalties. RBI may step in, find that this software we did not take care of, we did not fix the bug, so to say, and RBI may levy a fine. It may force us to fix the bug, also levy a fine which is penal in nature, so that others do not do this mistake, we also do not repeat this mistake. So, these are all indirect losses which will result in financial penalties. And finally, if that type of risk is serious enough, it may shut down my entire business. Many of you have heard of Enron, the company which at one point was worth which was doing transactions worth $130 billion. Due to certain financial failures, due to certain financial fraud carried on, not just did this company lose money, the entire company went out of business. A company doing $130 billion worth of business went down. Likewise, we know the case of Barings Bank. Thanks to the illegal trades done by one particular broker, this hundreds of year-old bank just went out of business. Not just loss of customers, loss of reputation, lot of penalties, the entire bank went down because the capital got wiped out. So, indirect losses, direct losses, loss of money, but indirect losses can also be equally severe, which may ultimately end in loss of business itself. The business itself may go down. So, business organizations take a number of measures to mitigate risk. It is not my intention to go through all of them, but let us look at some of them. One is monitoring. Remember, one of the measures of risk management is to monitor the risk and report, constantly keep monitoring what is happening. So, we do that by constantly doing audits. We constantly have a group of consultants come, people from outside who are not related to my organization. They come to the organization, they check our processes, they check that a human cannot misuse the system. Somebody cannot wrongly enter some account, some balance, or steal a password from somebody, use that to commit fraud. Technical audit. Are our systems safe? How easy are our systems to hack? How easy are our systems to hack and steal data? How easy are our systems to bring them down? So, that is called a technical audit, something called penetration test and things like that in the case of internet. So, we can have outside parties to come and check processes. They will even come and check physical processes. For example, we put all our documents in a particular room, we need to secure them, right. If we open the door, if you do not lock the door, we would have put them all in one room safely, we think, but if you do not secure the door, somebody can walk in and steal the documents or make copies. So, that are all process audits. How do we store documents? How do we take copies? How do we take backup? If our server fails, have we taken it data and kept a copy somewhere else so that we can restore it? So, we can have a process audit done, technical audit done. For example, in banking, the person who makes the transaction is not allowed to approve them also. Otherwise, what happens? I will give myself a loan of 1 crore and I will approve it myself, even though I may not have credit worthiness, or I can do it to a friend. So, what banks do, the person who does the entry to give the loan is not the person who approves it. The person who approves it might be a manager or somebody else. They call it as a maker and checker. So, this is a process they have put in place to reduce fraud by customers. That is, somebody cannot approve a loan to himself or their own party. We enter the details, calculate the loan, have a third party evaluate. So, process checkers will come and check that is this in place. What happens if the manager is in leave? Who approves? If the manager is on leave, does he give that right to me for that day to make the work easy? If they do that, it will be flagged. These process auditors will come and say your process for maker and checker, separation of duties, is not proper, because when the manager is on leave, you have no measure to fill that role. We need to put some other manager to come and do that role, or somebody else, some trusted party should be put in, not the person who is making the transaction. So, they will go through all the processes we have and evaluate how safe those processes are and what is the measure we have to take if the process breaks. What happens if the manager is on leave that day? What is the measure we take to approve the loan that day safely? Technical, how easy it is to hack into our system. So, consultants will come, programmers will come, who will try to hack into our system. They try to, it is called ethical hacking, they try to hack into our system, see how easy it is to break and give us an audit. They tell us how safe is our firewall, what is the possibility of that firewall failing, what happens if our hard disk fails, what measure we have in place to save the data, back up the data and restore. Those are all part of technical audit, and to make sure that our the risk from the technical aspect is reduced. And financial audit, are all the transactions kosher, all they are approved, have they if for any other transactions have taken exceptions, approval for exceptions, things like that. So, periodically financial organizations get these things audited to make sure that their systems are all in place, possibility of a failure or a bad event happening, the risk is reduced. That is one way to mitigate risk, constantly monitor and audit. In fact, in case of things like firewalls, people watch them on real time. There will be an application which watches the firewall, what is happening. If something unusual happens, it sends a notice to all the people saying that somebody may be trying to break into your firewall with the idea of hacking or something. Second measure is insurance. We have taken all these measures, things still fail. So, to cover ourselves from the losses, we insure. We take loss insurance. In fact, sometimes the financial institution may make the customer buy the insurance. Many banks today, if I go and take a home loan, they make me buy home loan insurance. That means, if I am not able to pay the loan for whatever reason, I pay a premium constantly, so that the insurance company pays the bank. So, banks are covering their financial risk against somebody failing to pay an insurance. That is a risk. The moment you give a loan to somebody, the risk is they may not pay their loan back. So, how do you cover? You make them buy insurance. So, if they are not able to pay, make their EMIs, the insurance company pays that. So, insurance is in fact one of the most common ways of mitigating insurance, mitigating risk. What is the cost? The cost of the premium. Insurance costs money, and if the case is severe enough, the premium may become quite high. But in general, we know that we cannot eliminate risks. We take all these measures. If all fails, we buy insurance, so that something bad happens, the impact of that bad event on us is reduced. Third, there are financial instruments called hedging, because for a period of time, for example, currency, rate of currency varies over a period of time. If my business is in rupees, when I export and get in dollars, how much rupees I get depends on the way dollar value changes. To make sure that if the dollar value falls too much, or if dollar gains too much, I do not lose money. If the dollar value falls too much, my profits come down, the money I get from exports come down. To protect against it, we do what is called as hedging and things like that. There are various financial measures, there are process measures, there is insurance, and there are financial measures. So, these are some of the ways in which organizations cover for their financial risk. So, in the fintech world, financial risk is a very big risk, big component of risk, and these are some of the bad effects and the ways to mitigate the risk. The second type of risk is operational risk. We have put up this entire system, something goes down, we cannot do our business. Like one of the bad effects that happened out of the 9/11 event, when the planes crashed into the World Trade Center, big thing is not just loss of servers and things like that. Big thing is we could not do business for the next month. And if you calculate, if we are losing $90,000 from one web page being down for 1 hour, if my business is down for a month, you can imagine costs will be there, how much business will be losing. So, this kind of risk is called operational risk. It can be pretty simple. We have wires in all our data center. Somebody while walking trips on a cable which pulls down a server or a file war. So, our entire system comes down for next 4 hours till you find where the problem is and set the server back. This is an example of an operational risk. Our operations are affected by any bad event, like somebody tripping over a wire, a plane bombing and crashing into our building. A flood, it did happen once. In one of the offices I worked, you know, all these tall buildings, many of them have their AC equipment on the top floor, on the roof. In this case, it was in the basement. So, there is the unexpected rain, that place gets hardly any rain. Suddenly we got some 3-4 inches of rain. That rain came, flooded the basement and threw all the AC equipment out. When all the AC equipment went out, all the computers shut down, because computers generate a lot of heat. Air conditioning is necessary to cool them. When the AC went down, computers got shut down. So, whole office was closed for 4 days. Imagine the loss, 500 people working in this building, we lost 2000 man days of work just because of flood, unexpected flood. So, these are all operational risks and the impact they have. Anything which affects the way we operate. If I am running the railways, a landslide somewhere is an operational risk. A landslide unexpected due to rain or whatever, but it blocks traffic on that line. So, that is those are examples of operational risk. It is there in every system and it is very much there in Fintech also. Operational risk is inherent in any business and refer to risks associated with products, business practices, damage to physical assets, as well as the execution, delivery and process management of the service. Say I am a food delivery service, and what is my business? I take food from the hotels and deliver it to customers and charge. If I have not planned, if for one day one of the delivery vehicles breaks down, one of the trucks breaks down, it is an operational risk. I have not made plans, that day I cannot deliver food, I cannot make my business. One day the driver may fall sick, driver may not turn up, I know alternative drivers. So, I have all the equipment, but due to execution there is nobody to execute, my business is affected. These are all ways in which operational risks enter into the system. Risks can be in the terms of business processes. Like I said, if somebody by mistake, I can mention a case where a person was making the entries, taking a backup and traveling to another location and entering them into the server. This is an business process risk, because that person, when he enters the data, by the time he enters into the server here after traveling, he may manipulate this, he may make the data, he may change the data. The correct process would be he enters the data, sends it by email or something, somebody else enters into the server. That would have been a proper business process. If we do not design it properly, there is a risk that somebody may deliberately commit fraud, or even by mistake they will simply delete data. Suppose we constantly enter data and they do not forget to take backups. If somebody wrongly enters and the database gets corrupted, we have no data left. So, that is a process risk. Internal controls, like the concept of separating of duties. One who makes the loan is not a person who approves the loan. So, we should have controls, or if the loan is of a certain amount, if the loan is beyond say 1 crore, it is not just to be approved by the manager, it may have to be approved by the general manager of the bank, things like that. Or fraud detection, for example, is a measure of internal control. Yesterday in the previous lectures, I gave an example of if I am using my credit card to do 10 transactions a month, in one given month I may do 20, 25. So, there are systems which will monitor, there are internal controls which monitor and tell that this person normally does 10, now he is doing 25, possibly the credit card might be stolen, there is a possibility of a fraud. So, we need to have measures to monitor for such things. Sometimes we put absolute limits, we say this credit card can only be used for 10 transactions in a month. Otherwise, you have to monitor and alert people when a potential of bad thing happening. Those are all examples of internal controls. Internal audit. Audit is something already mentioned. We constantly monitor what is happening and try to alert that if something bad has happened or about to happen. And segregation of duties, which I have been constantly saying, that any activity should be divided into two parts: somebody who does the activity, somebody who approves, verifies and approves the activity. The two activities should always be done by two different people or two different processes, otherwise possibility of manipulating and fraud are high. So, these are the ways in which we try to mitigate operational risk. But in technology, these are all in terms of processes and people. For technology, the way we mitigate operation risk. What is the big risk in technology? That our systems may become unavailable, other than somebody trying to hack and all those things. Those are all information security risks. In terms of operations, our systems may become unavailable, or if our system is attacked, damaged, we may not be able to continue our business, number one, and number two, we may lose data, so that we will not be able to start from where we left off. These are two big operational risks. Something may happen, something bad like the plane crashing, flood affecting our database, our data center, bad things do happen. In such cases, the two big problems are, one is it will affect, we may not be able to do business for that period of time, and number two, we may not be able to recover what we have lost. If we have lost data for the past 5 days, if we are not backed up, how do we recover from that? For that, there is an entire domain of knowledge and in business called BCP and DR, business continuity process and disaster recovery. So, something bad happens, first we need to ensure that the business continues. If we are in the financial industry doing stockbroking, buying and selling stocks, we need to make sure that even if one server goes down, all the people are able to buy and sell stocks using another set of servers. So, we do that by providing for redundancy. We have one server which is handling buying and selling of stocks. If it goes down during business hours, we lose business. Customers will not be able to buy or sell. They may lose money because they may want to sell at that point. When they are actually able to sell 4 hours later, the price of stock might have come down. They may sue us, saying that when I wanted to sell, your site was not available. At that time, the price of the stock was 100 rupees. When I was actually able to sell, it had come down to 90 rupees. And when I had 1000 shares, so I have lost 10,000 rupees because of your server not being available. So, they may sue us. So, if system is not available, customers may sue us. So, we need to provide that if a bad thing happens, if a disaster happens, business can continue. So, what do? We put 2 servers, identical servers running all the time. If this server goes down, we will have a device called a load distributor or a load balancer. The load balancer will send all the requests to buy and sell shares to server B. If server A goes down, we have provided for server B. This is called redundancy. Well, if one goes down, the other system still is alive. For very critical systems, we always build redundancies, or we may have an alternative. Our web page has gone down, so customers cannot place order through the web page. But I have made an alternate arrangement that if web page is not available, I have given them a free telephone number 1-800 call me or something like that. Customers will call, and we have made an alternate arrangement to take customers' calls. These are examples of making sure that a business continues even when disaster strikes. It may take the form of redundancies, it may take the form of alternative arrangements. If I am running a bus company, if my bus breaks down, I get an alternate bus from the nearest depot to take customers to their next destination. I make sure that passengers are not stranded if a bus breaks down for whatever reason. Same thing with trains and things like that. So, we need to make sure that a business continues even if disaster strikes. And the second part of it, to protect us against operational risks, is what is called disaster recovery. So, business has come down, though our server has come down, we have made alternative arrangements and to continue. Now, we need to go back to the original state. So, for that I will have to build a new server or recover this server, also restore the data that might have been lost. When a server goes down, we also lose lot of data. So, if I do not have a redundant server which is very expensive, like I said, if this data center costs $10 million, that will cost another $10 million. This is called a hot backup. Instead of that, if I have a manual system, the server has gone down, but you can call our broker and place your order still. You can call them using a phone number. So, when they are doing it manually, I am losing data. The data is stored separately in a manual system. So, when the server comes back, we need to be able to recover and restore all the data. This kind of process where we have measures to recover to the original state is called disaster. I have taken a copy of my data every day or every hour, stored it in a different place safely. So, when we build a server back, we bring the data, restore it to the original state, add all the additional data in the gap and bring it to the latest state. So, ensuring protection against operational risks, especially in technology, typically takes two forms: business continuity process, make sure that the business continues even if something bad happens, if something comes down, something, for example, if there is a virus attack, we may be forced to shut down all our systems. The system may not shut down, but we, for our protection, we may have to shut down till we remove the virus. So, in that gap, we need to make sure that business continues, and once we restore, once we have removed that risk, once we have removed the effect of that bad incident, we are able to recover to the original state where we are. We use measures like redundancies to ensure that. So, other than these process measures which we can use to mitigate operational risk, the risk of technology in operations can be mitigated by processes using these two concepts of business continuity process and disaster recovery. That brings us to the third type of risks, technology risk. There is a risk of technology in operations also. Just now we saw that if our technological components fail, we are so heavily dependent on technology today that our systems fail. What if ATMs fail, for example? It is technology. If ATMs fail, customers will not be able to withdraw money, there will be huge queues in front of our bank branches. So, there is always operational risk from technology, but there is an inherent technological risk also. The technology risk refers to technology failure that leads to the inability to transact, that is operational. Transactions within a distributed financial system travel through several communication systems and devices in order to initiate the transactions, transfer funds, communicate confirmation with clients. The process may be exposed to potential breakdowns for a number of sources: hacking, power failure, system faults, etc. And any breakage in this chain leads to an inability to complete a transaction. But that is only one part of it. Something like hacking may result in loss of information. Our information security may also be affected. So, that is the other aspect of it. Technological risk is not only to continuation, technological risk also applies to information security. We saw in a previous lecture one of the measures we use to provide for protection of information, that is cryptography. There are various other measures like firewall, intrusion detection, fraud detection, identity management, biometric identification. There are various measures to ensure that our systems are safe against information security, that information is not stolen. It is not just that we are not able to transact business, we also need to make sure that information does not fall into the wrong hands and get misused. And the third type of technology risk which people do not talk much about is risk of obsolescence. We buy a system running on Windows or some another platform using a old language called COBOL. Many of the old, why did the Y2K problem happen? It happened due to obsolescence. The old systems allowed only 2 digits for the year, 86, or let us take a better number, 17. Does it refer to 1917, or when the year 2000 came, does it refer to 2017? This led to a risk of systems failing. This is an example of technological obsolescence, that is, systems became useless for a period of time because they were not updated. We did not update our databases from 2 digits to 4 digits, and that posed a serious risk to our businesses. There is a possibility, people were worried that all our systems will fail, will break down because they do not know how to handle a change in the century. Or we develop our applications on an old platform like COBOL. There is an old language called COBOL, common business oriented language. is what it is referred to. We might have developed our application in COBOL, but COBOL does not support internet. So, when we are doing banking out of our branches with tellers running through the system, not a problem, COBOL was perfectly fine, but COBOL does not support internet. Internet is supported by .NET and Java and various things that we hear about. So, when our system, if we develop our system in COBOL, if we do not update it, our system becomes outdated, obsolescent. We may not be able to conduct our transactions. So, we need to constantly make sure that our systems are always up to date. They can continue to support, the term we say, they continue to support new developments in the field. If tomorrow the next version of internet comes into vogue, like we have till we have IPv4, if IPv6, these are two terms in internet, if IPv6 replaces IPv4, we need to make sure that all our equipment, all our programs, all our applications support IPv6, otherwise our system becomes obsolescent. So, technological obsolescence, especially those who are in the planning field, one type of risk when you develop any new system is to ensure that your system do not get obsolescent or become redundant over a period of time. They no longer work as we designed it to be, and we have to spend a lot of time and money in ensuring that our system works with the new system. So, this is the third type of risk. We looked at financial risk, we looked at operational risk, we looked at technology risk. The solution to this is to be constantly plan properly, plan for the next 10 years, get an idea of what is coming down the line in technology. Technology is evolving very fast, things will become obsolescent, and develop systems in a way that we are not totally tied to that. If necessary, we can change one part, if necessary we can change the database alone without touching anything else. If our database has become old and obsolescent, we must plan it in such a way that we can replace the database alone without touching anything else. Otherwise, if we are forced to change the entire system, costs a lot of money and a lot of grief. If our server is outdated, we need to design our system in such a way, proper design, that we can replace the server alone without touching anything. Or if your program, your application gets outdated, we can write a new program without changing any of the hardware and networking. So, not only technological risk affects operations, for which we can take measures to mitigate, but one measure of mitigating technological obsolescence is proper planning, that is a must. So, these are the three types of risks which are relevant to fintech. Like I said, there are so many other types of risk, but for fintech these are the three most critical types of risk. Some of the questions in technology risk we need to ask: do I have service level agreements with my system provider? We sometimes get our cloud service, for example. Do they assure proper uptime? If the cloud service is down, my program may be running, but my data may not be available. So, do I have guarantees from them that the system will be up for X amount of time? Do I have service level agreements with fault diagnosis? Am I able to measure SLA? So, number of questions, there are some about 7-8 questions risked. Are our third party providers vendors effective and adequate in their security protocols? My system is perfectly safe, but my database is hosted by somebody, my internet is provided by somebody. Is their system safe enough? I need to ensure that. So, we need to ensure that all the systems, all the joints, all the points which affect my systems are secure against financial risk, operational risk. Another summation of some of the key types of risk shown here, we will skip over that. So, in sum, risk is inherent in all financial systems. We cannot eliminate risk, it can rarely be eliminated, only mitigated. Whenever we do anything, there is a risk in that. The risk that systems may not work the way we want it to work, the way we have planned for it. So, risks must be identified and documented, and measures must be taken to mitigate the risks. The measures should be taken to mitigate financial risks, insurance, operational risk, BCP-DR, technology, guard against obsolescence. These are some of the key measures. So, the idea of today's lecture was to understand that whenever we do anything, there are risks involved. In fintech, there are certain risks which are more important than other types of risks, and what are those risks? How do we identify them? How do we take measures to reduce their effect, that is mitigate them? Okay? That is a summary of today's lecture. With that, we come to the end of today's lecture. This is broadcast on channel 16 on the Swayamprabha program. Thank you.